You're listening to a TGM production.
Hello and welcome back to the first episode of Joking Apart for 2026. Yes, we're back with the podcast. That is amazing. No, not bragging or anything, it just is. If you want to see more interviews by me, then if you go to Tom Mason, my main channel, you will see a playlist of every interview across all the different YouTube channels and areas that I do interviews. So that's your one-stop shop. Or attempt to go to my website, tommason.uk. Not always up to date, but I try my best. Anyway, we shall crack on. My guest today is best known for being a comedian, is one and only Adele
Ahoy
Clue.
there.
So we shall start at the very beginning, because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and so far she's not been wrong. She might be proven wrong one day. How did you get into the world I call ha 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 funny comedy?
Well, I did my first ever gig when I was a teenager, when I was at uni.
Mm,
So I suppose, I mean, I got into it before that by watching loads of stuff and enjoying it.
yeah.
But I did my first gig at uni, and it went well enough that I thought, yeah, I'll do that again, and that's kept happening. So it was, I can't even remember what my first jokes were. They weren't that good. They were very weird. I had a whole long routine about how Poundland sold milk and pregnancy tests and body boards. I can't remember how that was the one thing I thought the people need to hear about this. So in that routine, somehow I was on a body board in a sea of milk. It's very weird. But yeah, so I did some gigs on my own, and then I was in a double act with my friend for quite a bit at the beginning as well. And then I went back to doing stuff by my own, by myself later.
And when you started comedy, what was the comedy circuit like at the time you began?
Well, I did my first gigs. I went to Warwick Uni, so I did my first gigs like near Coventry and Leamington Spa and Birmingham and stuff like that. And they were pretty nice. They were. It was. There was a nice group of kind of. It's a small enough area that you meet a lot of the same
Yeah,
people at the gigs, so you bump into the same few people. So it's quite quickly you sort of feel like you know some people, and that's quite lovely. It was okay. There weren't that many women. I mean, it was probably just because I was slightly further outside of London and stuff. But yeah, the comedy society at my uni when I got there was just all men, and then eventually it was way more women by the time I'd left. But I don't take any credit for that. I was just one of a statistic.
yeah, yeah. And how has your style of comedy improved since the very early days to where you are as of today?
So I think at the beginning, apart from the weird milk and bodyboard routine I told you about, mostly when I started, I just did like one-liners because
Yeah,
I think they're quite a good test of like, can you write a joke?
yeah,
Great. So I used to do a lot of one-liners and puns and things, and I still use quite a lot of
yeah,
them. But like in my hour-long shows, they're all linked together by a narrative or by a theme or something like that. So I think what I've got much better at is being able to connect everything together and to being able to maintain a theme throughout whilst having the same punchline rate,
yeah,
which was what I was worried about when I first started. I thought, well, if I tell a story, I'll get too bogged down in being specific and making the story correct, and it won't be as funny.
yeah,
Whereas, when you see people who are good at doing storytelling, they put the punchlines in, and so now I've got the ability when I'm doing an anecdote or a story to have a punchline every 15 seconds, 10 seconds,
yeah,
because I learned how to do that by writing lots of one-liners early on.
yeah. And I think that what makes one-liners and puns really quite hard is because there's I can probably name a good few comedians that base their whole career on that. It becomes
Mm,
hard to find original puns that haven't already been stolen or
yeah.
taken. Or do you think you find that harder because you know that like Tim Vine might have done 12 of them and you might have thought, oh, it's original, but when you look it up, it's like 15
Mm.
other people have done it.
I think the thing I always found, and I still try to do if I'm writing a one-liner or particularly a pun, because with puns, like you say, a lot of the similar sounding words have been found.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing it, if it feels really easy, I'm suspicious. I'm like, have I
Yeah.
heard this somewhere? Is that why
Yeah.
it was so easy to write this joke? So I'll look them up. I'll try them on friends, and then if friends recognize them, that's always helpful. And the other thing I always think is sometimes you do use the same word change that someone's already used, and that doesn't mean that's the same joke. It's just the same observation there. So it's about the framing. And I think one thing that helped me at least is I tried to make most of my puns and my one-liners jokes only I could tell, like that they sounded like they were from my point of view. So which means that it's harder for them to be a joke someone else has done because it's about me.
Yeah. And one of the things you've done that, in my opinion, is it's quite hard because when you, and I've said this publicly on my website, so I can say this, but when you get given the brief of this thing, it's hard to find things where if you don't know too much about politics, it's hard to come up with the best politics show. But if you want to find the stupid story, you have to make sure that it's good enough to out there like a cat getting 100% attendance at school. When it turns out there was a whole video on that, and it was a cat, it was a child's cat, and the mother somehow just opened the door and the child and the cat, and she was like, "Yeah, the child's so safe because the cat's walking the child to school," and it didn't seem that safe because the cat wasn't allowed in the building, but it had been there every single day waiting for the child to come out.
Oh my God, that's
So the
dedication.
yeah, so the cat's been at school more times than the children, but obviously the cat's learned nothing. So what? And that's really off tangent. But what
Never
is?
apologize for talking about cats to me. I love cats. If we can talk about cats for the rest of the whole time we're here, great.
But what's your process when you're writing on and for two of the same words for the brilliant Scottish panel show Breaking the News?
Yeah. Well, the thing with breaking the news is quite helpful. I've done it a few times and I've done a couple of other topical ones. But the nice thing with breaking news, anyone who's even sort of asked for the brief, because they send that out to everyone,
Yeah, they do.
they're really clear in their brief. So the lead writer brief is a tiny bit different to the main brief, but basically they want a bunch of jokes for the opening and closing, and they give you so many news stories, just so many. They give you so many news stories that really, I always obviously look up the news story so I can make sure the joke I write is accurate, but you don't even necessarily need to, because they give you such good research to start from. So really they're giving you all of the framework and just going, okay, look, here's all the bits, just make that joke. So the process I tend to do with that is they want like a bunch of jokes for the opening and closing, and then they want a few for each of the main sections, like the main stories. They've got 3 rounds, and one of them's about people, and one of them's about news stories, and one of them's like slightly more irreverent news stories, I think. So I try. They never tell you how many jokes they want. At least they've never told me. Every time I've done it, they just send you the brief, and I'm just like, I hope I'm sending them enough jokes. I mean, they've come back, so I assume they're happy with it. But so I always try and send them like 20, 25 jokes for opening and closing, and then like 6 to 10 for each of the separate topics. So I'm sending them over 100 at least. And my process with that mainly is initially I sit down and I just read all of the short news stories that they want jokes on for the opening and closing, and any that I immediately think are funny I sort of write onto my own separate list. And then if I have a joke idea for straight away, great, I'll put that down. But I do it all by hand as well, which is very boring. I write everything down. I find it easier to write a joke in handwriting than I do typing it out. Because you can arrange your thoughts better. So I write down myself like a little separate list of these are all the little news stories from the beginning that I found funny. And sometimes I look up some of my own, because then if you write a good joke, they might like it, and they won't have other ones like that. And then I tend to one at a time pick the main stories and just do a bunch of research on them slowly, and listen to like Radio 4 shows, topical shows, like the Today program and stuff like that. I listen to that, see what people have actually been saying, so that when I write the jokes, I do know what I'm talking about. And then it's a little bit easier, and then you just sort of hone down on what you actually think is funny, because often the jokes they really want are very short. Like the panelists are there to do longer observations and funny sort of thoughts, whereas you're just there for like beginning, end of the round, a little bit of seasoning basically. So it's got to be pretty succinct.
And I quite like what you get when you get given the brief for breaking the news. I quite liked how the when you look at the story, if you copy that and paste onto Google, you get the exact link, and
Oh yeah.
you can find that exact line, so you know that that's exactly the correct story, and you can then piece out. So as I said before, with the example of the cat story, I then looked
Mm.
that up further to see if there
Yeah.
was another angle to that, and that's when I stumbled across the greatest video of all time on the BBC News website. I was gutted that they never even covered it on the
Mm.
show because I just thought that there's so much you can do with it because it was a genuine video, and you watched the cat
The
walk
cat
with
walking
the
someone to
boy,
school.
and it's like they're giving it an award. It's
Oh,
an
I've
award-winning.
seen stuff like that. It's like an even better version of when American guide dogs get to graduate with their handlers and they have a
Yeah.
little cap on.
Yeah. And so it's like that's what I quite like about breaking the news is that you can have all
Yeah.
these serious news things, and there's many people out there that are great, fantastic at doing all the political stuff. But I think for me personally, it's all the stupid ones. I feel like because I know more about it, and I'm
Mm.
more likely to write something that's like semi good, but better than like if I tried to think of some
Sometimes the
political
other
thing.
thing you got to think about for like some of the more fun and light-hearted stories,
Yeah,
you don't have to be as careful about them. Like for some
yeah,
of the stories are really horrible. Like a lot
yeah,
of the news is horrible. So obviously you look at it, you try and work out what a funny angle is, but
yeah,
also you do have to think a little bit whilst you're doing like that. Is this a funny angle? Is it somehow inappropriate?
yeah.
Whereas the slightly more fun stories you can really play around with, and you're not going to offend the cat that walks its child
Yeah,
to school and stuff
yeah,
like that. So there's
yeah.
more fun there, I think.
Yeah, and I think when they do like Black Fridays, and because Black Friday is known for its
Mm.
horrendous people being trampled on because some old lady wants a TV that she'll never use.
Yeah.
I think you can find so many funny things in that, and I think it breaks up
Mm.
the monotonous of like how dark the news is. Do you think that
Yeah.
for
Well, a
you?
lot of the main rounds are
Yeah,
about big stories. So I
yeah,
think they're often for the beginning and end. They kind of want those stories people might not have seen.
yeah.
Mm.
And do you think that's what makes like news satire work really well because they can balance between the main story everyone's talking about, like
Mm.
America or Yugoslavia, well, not Yugoslavia, but I don't, but somewhere that way.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought of that one, but and then they have like the
I think
mix
you were
in the
probably
stuff.
going for Ukraine.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but it's been
Mm.
a long day. But it mixes with the silliness. Do you think that that's what makes satire in news work so well still now? Because there is enough stupid stuff like people
I
dressing up
think
as
so.
dogs.
Yeah, I think so. I think also like quite a lot of people get a fair chunk of their news from seeing satire of it.
Yeah,
You know, for example, for American news, I try and follow American news. I'm quite interested in it.
yeah,
But in the end, I find a lot of my American news knowledge comes from like Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert
yeah,
because I I watch just boring
yeah,
news stuff, but there's only
yeah,
so much time in the day. So in the end, you're like, oh, I kind of want to watch something fun.
yeah,
So there's a balance between the a lot of them get very well, like you're saying, where you take a difficult story, you examine it, you treat it seriously, but also make it funny. And then you just talk about something that is still news,
yeah,
but not quite so devastating. And that's a nice thing. Things like Mock the Week was good with that. You know, they'd have some rounds about big
yeah,
stories and then, some much smaller things that were also current, but balanced it out. Bit
yeah.
of light.
Yeah, and I think that I think you can get a lot of like you think politics though evil and whatnot. I do think that David Baddiel. I don't know if you've seen this. This is widely relevant, but still relevant. It's David Baddiel, the greatest scene of any factual program I've ever seen that merges the lines between serious and comedy because he calls himself Catman, but it's when he knocks on the door of number 10 to let the cat in, and they clearly say to him, "What do you want?" And he went, "I just want to let Larry in," because he's like, no one's letting him in. Larry wants to be into the building, so he has to knock on. So he's doing this serious thing about cats and about why no one on TV wants to show cats, apart from Joe Brand. But he then lets the cat in, and I think that just like separates. Like it says, oh yeah, politics isn't all doom and gloom. We've
Yeah.
got cats that need to be let into buildings.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that also putting a little bit of like light-hearted stuff into politics
Yeah,
allows you to treat the really serious stuff
yeah,
as serious as it
yeah,
should be because you have that contrast.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And honestly, on a similar lines, but a lot of these shows like Breaking the News and well, the DMs are open if it's still going on. I don't really know on how to go, but
Oh,
these
no.
open
Yeah.
platform shows mainly on radio, even though Breaking the News does have a TV version. What
Mm.
was your process when you were working on the now deceased Newsjack?
Newsjack was one where I submitted just like it was just the open submissions. So I would
Yeah,
just read whatever their things they were asking for that week. And I submitted a bunch of times and I managed to get on it a couple, I think.
yeah,
But normally the process was the same. Like if I had enough time that week, I would
yeah,
try and write some one-liners. I did have a bad habit of just sort of not submitting them if I wasn't happy. And I don't know if
yeah,
that helps you or hurts you. I think if you've written however many 6 one-liners I think they used to let you send in for Newsjack, and you really don't think they're good,
yeah,
no, you shouldn't send them. You don't have to send them every time.
yeah,
But equally, if you think you've tried, even if you're not happy with all of them, you should.
yeah,
And equally, if you think they're really brilliant, send them in. But remember,
yeah,
they're still your jokes, especially if they don't use them. You can still use those jokes. So if you write 6 really great jokes, they don't happen to use them, it wasn't wasted. You've still got 6 great jokes,
yeah,
and that's quite handy as well.
yeah. And it's been widely spoken about in the last year because the British Comedy Guide released a pro article about this. But from your experience in this
Mm.
world, for anyone that's watching that has heard what we've spoke about and seemed quite interested in that world, what's your key piece of advice for anyone that wants to get into the open submission comedy radio programs and how do you think that what will benefit them as if they're new to that game?
I think one of the best things to do, which is I think surprising number of people don't do as much as they should, is listen to a few episodes. If you listen to a few episodes of the show you want to submit to, you really get an idea of the structure of the jokes they like. Some of them like different jokes, some of them like longer jokes, some of them really, really like short jokes, some of them like jokes that have quite a specific pattern. Radio
Mm,
4 for the news quiz or Newsjack or ones like that have quite an intellectual tone to some of their jokes,
yeah,
but equally it's you can work out how dirty you can get away with and stuff. So listening is so important, because if you don't listen to them, you could write 6 fantastic one
yeah,
liners that they'll never use because they're not suitable for the presenter and they're not suitable for the show. You've got to bear in mind as well who's going to say your joke. It's
yeah,
normally the presenter. So listen to the show. What do you know about them? What do you know
yeah,
about their opinions? What do you know about their age, their gender, things like that, that will dictate how a joke reads.
yeah,
So listen to those shows. When you are listening to the jokes that have been submitted, listen to, like, kind of mentally note which ones did you really like.
yeah,
Like if there's a pattern to the jokes you really like, great, try and write jokes that have not that aren't the same, obviously,
yeah,
that have that kind of pattern to them, that
yeah,
have that kind of beat to them,
yeah,
because that's probably easier. And yeah, also just try and have a read of some, like you were saying, these little smaller stories, for, especially for open submission things. A story nobody else has sent a joke in about, if you write it well, stands a better chance than a brilliant joke you wrote about the most popular story of
yeah,
the week, because everyone's written a joke about that.
yeah,
Other thing to think of, it's it's fairly easy to work out how to submit to them, but
yeah,
some of them feel like you don't know. So
yeah,
sort of go on British Comedy Guide or go on the BBC website or whatever. They'll tell you how to submit. They want people to submit. They're not trying to stop you. So yeah, and another fun thing to do, especially when you're newer, I think, is write with a few friends. Like sit down with a couple of friends or be on Zoom with a couple of friends and write together and write a bunch of jokes, and then write enough for you all to submit them. Obviously, keep tabs of
yeah,
who has ownership of each one, but it's good to write them in
yeah,
with other people, and then you get immediate feedback into, like, this bit's confusing or this bit really works, and
yeah.
that will make the submissions better overall.
Yeah, and I think another thing to keep an eye out is on the BBC Writers' Room opportunity page.
Mm.
That's another good way to find out if it's not always up to date. Sometimes they
Yeah,
trick you, like DMs are open. I thought it was still going, but then when you try and find that information elsewhere, you find out that that series had ended, even though they forgot to write what year
yeah.
on the page. So I do think it's a double-edged
And
sword. You have
sometimes
to,
British Comedy Guide is better updated on
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, keep an eye out on them.
Yeah, and one of the other in the same sort of world, I'm gonna call it in the same sort of world to breaking the news, because it's if you like breaking the news, you'll like this next thing. But what was it like appearing on an episode of the 2021 series of the brilliant? I mean, it's excellent. It's that and excellent comedy, the two best things in this genre. What was it like appearing on the BBC Scotland series, Edinburgh Unlocked.
It's very cool. It was during the Fringe that year,
Yeah,
2021, and that was a Fringe where nobody was sure it was going to happen until quite late.
yeah,
So there weren't that many people. There were people there, but
yeah,
there were nowhere near as many shows as there normally are in Edinburgh.
yeah,
So already that Fringe festival felt quite fun. Everyone's audiences were full. The audiences were so grateful. People just really excited to go to
yeah,
shows. So I think everyone who was performing at that festival was having fun anyway. So being on Edinburgh Unlocked, it was sort of fun because there was that, it captured that kind of
yeah.
feeling. And I was on with Masai Graham, who's a good friend, and he's very funny as well. So it was just us doing some silly one-liners and getting to sort of be pleased that the Fringe was happening. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and I think that what's good about Edinburgh Unlocked, from my point of view, being, well, I don't know how many hours away, but being in England, not in Scotland, which is
Mm,
the main takeaway from that, you sort of see these things, you sort of get into the world. It's like, whereas next up comedy, you get to watch some of the shows and you get to
yeah.
interact with it that way. I think with what's good about Edinburgh Unlocked is you get a more rounder view of it. It's not
Mm.
just
You
comedy.
get a little bit of, like you're saying,
Yeah,
like walking around the streets, seeing what the festival feels like.
yeah,
Because until you've been there, obviously you can understand what a
yeah,
festival feels like. But the Fringe is very unique, and like there's quite a lot of areas of the festival that are
yeah.
like hubs and stuff, and where you're walking around. There's loads going on, and it's nice to get that as well. It's not just a room, lots of separate rooms with people doing shows. There's a whole feeling to the festival that you can capture with that.
Yeah, and I think that you see things that you wouldn't normally think about looking at, like
Mm,
Martin Nielsen dressed as a poo to help fly someone else's show,
mm.
or the I think it was the I must have said this several times, but I think it's the Wheel of Death, but it wasn't as it was like just unsafe. It didn't look as safe at all because it was like these women were doing all
Oh
sorts.
yeah.
It looked so dangerous. I thought. I'm glad I watched that on TV and not actually there. That would have scared me more
Mm.
because none of them were. They have to be on safety harnesses for everything else, which is not the Wheel of
Yeah.
Death. It's got the name, says, yeah, you might want to be careful. But you learn more and you see interesting bits like and I don't know the name of it, but there's a BBC podcast and one of the presenters said, well, my mother doesn't know I do this. And it made me, I wouldn't have ever thought that you could ever make a misjudgment statement ever. Because the mother probably might stumble across it on BBC Scotland or the iPlayer and go, oh, this seems interesting, and find out the daughter's doing something that she probably didn't approve of. But why do you think that it's so important that a show like that exists for the general public?
Edinburgh's really expensive to go to. So the ideal would be everyone who's interested in the Edinburgh Fringe can afford to attend the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah,
But realistically, it's really expensive. The accommodation is expensive, travel is expensive. A lot of people live in other countries.
yeah,
So it's nice that there's something that you can look at and you can go, what's the Fringe like? And it gives an impression of that you can
yeah,
actually see and feel, so that if in the future you go to the Fringe, you feel like you understand what you're
yeah.
going to. But if you never go, you still understand what the Fringe sort of feels like and what it
Mm,
is to comedy and what it is to the arts in
mm,
general. So I think it's just valuable to show people who don't go to Fringe festivals that they still exist, that they
yeah,
are important to reinforce the value of comedy, the
mm,
arts, things like that don't get as much money as they should. So showing people again and again, look, this really cool thing's happening.
yeah,
People enjoy it. It's great. Is always helpful,
yeah.
and hopefully it reaches a few people who might not know about the Fringe or wouldn't have found out about the Fringe without it, and then they can suddenly come and storm it 10 years later or
Yeah.
something.
And I think that what's really good about Edinburgh Unlocked, unlike most shows, that
Mm,
even though the sense of the feel of the show is the same each year, the format sort of alters so that
mm,
you get a new version of the way they're showing it. So it's like last year's had the bits where some comedians got to have like, I don't know, 10, maybe, no, maybe like 4 or 5 seconds to say one of their jokes from their show. And you
mm.
see their name
Yeah, I did a few of them.
and
Yeah.
that gave, as you will know, that gave the experience to you get to see what their jokes are, but then at the
Mm,
same time you then get to hear some longer
mm.
sets to get the feeling. Do you think that that's not only is it helpful for the general public that might not be able to make it, but also helpful for some punters that might be going in the next week, and they
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
see
So
some of the comedy
helps you
bits that they might
decide.
want to watch?
It's helpful to do it that way, because if they, if they do one way or
Yeah,
the other way, it would be really jarring. If they only did loads of people at the festival doing 5 second jokes from their show, that would be a relentless watch. That would
yeah,
be hard work to watch a whole episode of, no matter how much you like jokes.
yeah,
And also, if they do the opposite, where they only do like quite focused, in-depth bits about various people there, realistically those people are going to be the people who have quite expensive shows, who spent a lot on
yeah,
promotion and things like that, which means quite a lot of shows get overlooked. So if you do both, you just let yourself highlight more shows, and you
yeah.
let more people have a chance to be seen and sort of spotted in a good way.
Yeah, and I quite like that, and we will move on in a minute, but I quite liked how you get to see family shows. The thing you think about with festivals and theatre in general, you don't really on TV get highlighted these family shows,
Mm,
especially ones that where it's mainly for the parents to enjoy, but those little babies that are going to be crying the entire way through.
mm,
It's all right for them to be in the room and the
yeah.
performers, and you get to get the feeling that the performers are all right with that. So when you go to
Mm,
a wedding, there's always a baby crying, and the people getting married are probably not too best pleased that there's a
yeah.
crying baby whilst they're trying to do the greatest moment of their life. But in that environment, you get to see that the performers are welcoming that. And that sort of fascinates me in that sense. Do you think that that's another highlighting to help parents to say, well, you can come on, you can have a nice time, even though you've got a 3-year-old that might not be sleeping?
Yeah, well, I think it's quite useful, because otherwise, like, the audience at the Fringe is, it's fairly varied, but I would say quite a lot of the audience, because of the cost and because of, responsibilities and jobs and things, are older couples.
Yeah.
Not ancient, but older couples who
Yeah.
are like
Yeah.
able to, either they're retired, or they just, they've got the money to take time off, who
Yeah.
can come up for a week. But you want to show people who aren't yet there,
Yeah.
you and your kids could be totally welcome at comedy at the Fringe, at anywhere else. There's lots of comedy shows around the country where, they're either comedy for kids, or they're comedy where you're allowed
Yeah.
to bring your baby, things like that. And you want people to go to that, because otherwise you leave people thinking, oh, well, live comedy isn't something for
Yeah.
me until I can come back way later. But you want people to be able to come to live comedy at any point
Yeah.
in their life, ideally not like with their newborn screaming, but if
Yeah.
their newborn is going to be calm in a baby comedy show, of
Yeah.
course they should think that they can come. And
Yeah.
it's nice that they can realize that is a thing that exists, because you wouldn't intuitively think that
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah, and I think that it entertains on two levels. It's family friendly enough that the child not going to pick up any swear words, and it's like pantomime really, because it's like
Yeah.
what it's for it's the kids get one level of sense of,
Mm.
even though they might not remember it, but it's the parents get a sense of
That's
that's
like The
really
Simpsons,
fun.
isn't it? The Simpsons has a lot of jokes
Yeah,
in it that are for people who are clearly adults,
yeah,
whereas it also has so many jokes in it that everyone gets, or that are quite childish. So, everyone thinks
yeah,
it's for them, but no, and everyone is right about
yeah,
that, which is
yeah.
nice.
Because I think that people call The Simpsons an adult comedy. I think it stops being adult when it's on like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Channel 4. That starts to become it's for everyone. It's less. It's like
Yeah,
Family Guy, more
it's
bluey.
yeah, it's The Simpsons. I would say, like, there's some episodes of The Simpsons that you probably wouldn't want your kids to see, but not in a huge way. Like, nothing terrible's happening. But The Simpsons, it's not like a kids show, but it's a
Yeah,
universal show.
yeah,
It's like some comedians, like sort of Lee Evans or Ross Noble, where like children can enjoy them, not
yeah,
because this show is written for children, but
yeah,
because the humor still translates
yeah,
well. They're not relying on adult references and
yeah,
things. So
yeah, yeah. And I think Ross Noble's a great example of he's like silly, and it's silly enough
mm,
that he didn't have to say anything that's wildly too out there. He can say stuff that will make people go, "What?" But then
yeah,
kids will go, "Ah, that's really funny." Like Hamster Hotel is my favorite because
yeah,
he was on Celebrity Australian Apprentice, and he made a hamster hotel, tried to sell it to this child, but then he found out later on that Australia doesn't have any hamsters. So he was selling this thing, and Lord Sugar just went along with it. And so he was selling this thing that no one knew what it was. No one could use it, but it
yeah.
was just his thing that he sold. And then he sold sand and pretended it was some ancient thing, and literally won that task by saying, "Oh, it's magical sand, and each sand has a curse on it if you sprinkle over your enemies." But he made it all up on the spot.
Yeah.
and it showcases the you can see the joy in the kids' faces that they're
Mm.
getting something out of it, and the parents are getting something out of it because they know that he's an idiot. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, lots of stuff like that. It's I do some kids gigs. I'm not as good
yeah,
as lots of other people at it, but a lot of it is having respecting that they're not like they're not stupid. They
yeah,
know plenty. It's respecting their intelligence, but also their knowledge base.
yeah,
So children are very smart, but why would children get references from the 90s, the early
yeah,
noughties? Like none of them were alive. Of course, they don't know
yeah,
who Take That are, or like NSYNC or something like that.
yeah,
So if you have a joke about something like that, that won't work at a kids gig. Not
yeah,
because the children don't understand the joke, it's because they don't understand why that joke works. They don't
yeah,
get reference. If you
yeah,
make it more modern, you make it a joke about, I don't know, K-pop Demon Hunters or something like that. That is a
yeah,
current reference
yeah,
for children. They
yeah,
will get it, and it can be the same joke basically. So it's about respecting how clever they are,
yeah.
but also in a way that doesn't give them information that they wouldn't have any reason to know.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've done that when you see it advertised, you think it's one thing, but when
Mm.
you really read the title, right? So the I think it must be the poster is advertised as one thing, but then the title suggests it's something else, and I'm assuming it's two merged together. Uh I've never worked it out, but what was it like doing? And it seems like it should be on Dave every year. What was it like doing the pun championships?
It should be on Dave every year. It's very fun. So the Pun Championships, from people who don't know, is like a competition style thing where
Yeah,
people are competitively doing puns against each other in elimination rounds until there's a winner.
yeah.
So it's part of Leicester Comedy Festival. I've done it 3 times and I won it one year. Yay! So now I
Woo!
don't have to do it again. And the way it works format wise is they have 8 finalists who are doing it.
Mm,
In advance, you're given the 20 topics that
yeah,
might come up. So you can write puns for all those 20 topics. So every time I did it, I tried to write minimum 10 jokes for each topic, and then I got rid of the ones. So I would end up with about 5 to 7 because they use about 5.
yeah,
So you go there with 100 to 150 jokes that you've written. And it's because there's 8 of you, they start with 4 first round matches, and they pick 2 topics out. You do your puns one after the other on that topic. The audience does a cheer off, and whoever wins
yeah,
goes through to the next round. So you just go through like that in an elimination, and it's really fun in the room. They
yeah,
do it in a boxing ring in the middle of the
yeah.
Montfort Hall, which is very cool. So you like have the audience all around you,
Wow.
and a lot of the way I did it at least was I did my puns as well, but also I did like comebacks to the other people
Yeah,
and chatting to the host and stuff like that, and sort of playing around a bit so
yeah,
that people get that you can do it on the spot as well as in advance.
yeah,
And it's very fun. It's really a lot of writing. I think you might watch it and you might think either have they just sort of looked up a bunch of puns on that topic? No,
yeah,
they are all meant to be jokes you've written. If there's any jokes you recognize, that's someone cheating. Like all of them should be original,
yeah.
and they're all ones that people have spent time and effort on writing. So there's a lot of writing hours and
Mm,
performing hours that go into being
yeah,
good and doing well at that competition. So it's fun. I think in the end it works quite well. I think to win it rewards both of those things. Like
yeah.
you can only really win it if you do a really good job of the writing of the jokes and the performing of the jokes. Whereas
Mm,
you can get through a couple of like a round or two with just good writing or just good performing, but in the end it does quite a good job of funneling into not always the best person,
yeah,
but someone who did deserve to win.
yeah,
Like it's luck. In the first round, if you get the 2 worst topics that you've got, you might just get eliminated, even if the other 18 were all brilliant. But
mm,
yeah, it's very fun, and it would make for a great TV format
yeah,
because it's very interactive. It's like battley type rounds.
yeah,
They do film it, but they only put
yeah.
out clips, I think.
Yeah, well, they sometimes not air it. That's not the word. Live stream it, I think,
Mm,
on Next Up Comedy, which I'm not sponsored by, but I have reviewed it for them, and it is a cracking service.
yeah.
I've found so many excellent comedians on there that I wouldn't have
Mm.
thought ever to look at. So Next Up is worth it. But I think that out of the two main comedy events that are set in rings, I think the Punch Championship is safer.
Than the
Um,
wrestling.
yeah, because I've seen it, and I always
Mm.
never understood. how it's safe because it's all acting. WWE and all this is all
Mm.
acting, but it's still you can hear it and it still looks painful.
People do
And
get some injuries doing it, I know,
yeah, and
but
obviously Maisie Adams has made it well because they aired it on Dave, which is another issue altogether. But the Maisie Adams was on Champions of Champions of Taskmaster, and she was injured from it, so she couldn't ride a bull, so she had to lie flat instead of riding the bull in one of the tasks. So a
oh,
nun lay down because she hurt her back,
oh
and
yeah.
and when you watch it, you can sort of tell it doesn't seem safe either. But why do you think that? A ring is sort of a good setting for a comedic event.
Well, I mean, if you're going to be pedantic about it, it goes all the way back to like doing Shakespeare stuff in the round,
Yeah,
doesn't it? Like, if you're doing something physical or something like silly, like the pun championships is silly. You
yeah,
can just stand
um,
still and read your notes and do your puns, but really it's about like wandering into the ring and
yeah,
performing it for everyone around you. And that's a lot more interactive and daft than it is just doing that from a stage to the
yeah,
same number of people. So really it's just about trying to draw people in and get people to
yeah,
embrace the kind of chaos of an event like that. Like
yeah,
the wrestling would not be as funny if it was the same wrestling moves on a stage with the audience only on one
yeah,
side. It just inherently doesn't work. You need to have that interactive feel.
yeah.
So yeah, I think sometimes the idea that you're performing in 360 degrees makes people
Yeah,
ramp it up a bit more.
yeah, and I think the third most funniest thing to do in a ring that is comedy was the Island having a fight with a kangaroo, which again is one of the greatest TV clips of all time because it generally was the fact that Woody Allen was doing what he was doing, and then this kangaroo was really going for it, wearing boxing gloves and everything. It was like ding ding ding. Um, but because it was on some TV channel that no one had ever seen in Britain, it was like a very like low budget channel, and he thought Britain was the best place to fight a kangaroo. Don't know why he chose Britain instead of Australia.
Yeah,
Um,
there's loads of them there. There's
yeah,
like tons of them there. You could
yeah.
just do it in the streets.
Yeah, you can. Now, one of the other things you've worked on, I know for a fact, was sort of put on hold due to Comedy Central doing something very similar, but then Comedy Central never saying they cancelled it, but then didn't actually do any more. But what was it like working on an episode of the online, which there needs to be more of, but like YouTube panel show, What's in the Box?
I've done lots of episodes of What's in the Box. It's very fun. I've done a bunch of the online ones. I've done it live quite a few times. I'm doing
Yeah,
it live at Leicester Comedy Festival next month. It's a very fun format. It's a good improv format in the way that there's quite a lot of other improv formats
yeah,
where it really allows. There's normally three people on
yeah,
with Frizz who hosts it, and they do a good job of allowing every single person to have enough time to be silly,
yeah,
which is really good. But also, there's enough structure to it
yeah,
that the audience feel like something's happening and there's some progress and there's some reason for each round to happen. Because sometimes you see improv stuff, and I love doing improv, it's great, but
yeah,
some improvised show formats feel a little bit too loose. And as an audience member, you sort of go, what's the aim here? Where are they trying to go? And obviously, for something like What's in the Box, in the same way as QI
yeah,
or any TV panel show, really who wins isn't the point. Who wins
yeah,
is just a framing device to
yeah,
structure the show around. And it does a good job, What's in the Box, of having been well framed, having longer rounds, having shorter rounds,
yeah,
involving the audience in some rounds, which is quite fun. It's, yeah, if people haven't seen it, they probably haven't. Some of the basically, like Frizz often has a box and
yeah,
it's just like what's in this box, and has put something in the box, and you all have to say what you think is in the box. And the winner isn't really the person who's the most accurate, it's the person who's most convincing about why, when they reveal what's in the
yeah,
box, you then have to go, oh yes, the reason I'm right is this. So if they reveal a pen and you had
yeah,
said something completely different, you just got to talk around to why what you
yeah,
meant was actually the pen.
yeah,
And it's a good writing exercise, it's a good improvising exercise. It's also just quite good for, cynically, like I'm doing at Leicester Comedy Festival, it really works well there.
yeah,
All three of the people there, you're on stage for the whole show, so everyone in the audience gets a really good idea whether they find you as an individual funny, and if they do, great, hopefully they'll come and see you elsewhere, and if they don't, hopefully they find someone else funny and they'll go and see them, and
yeah,
you don't use up any of your material. It's a
yeah.
win-win.
And I think that what it showcases, not only is the format good, but it's that the industry needs to, and I think YouTube does it really well because it gives people the freedom to do these things, but it showcases that the industry needs to let more of these, more comedians have a lot hosting them instead of the most well-known names, because What's in the Box, to me, when I first saw it was incredible, but it
Mm,
made me wonder, why is this not on TV? Not just the format, well, why are these selection of people not on TV?
mm.
Why do you think that these type of things are becoming more popular on YouTube, and why do you think that the industry in the TV sense aren't sort of taking those people along with the shows to TV?
Well, well, there's a number of different elements to this answer. The reason they work well on places like YouTube is you can just do the thing. You don't have to run it through lots of
Yeah,
commissioners. You don't have to, you can do it on the cheap. You don't have to have a whole crew. It's just however many people and their camera in their bedrooms normally. It's much cheaper. You don't have to, talk to lots of people about budgets for that.
yeah,
I think the reason that you don't end up seeing the thing is in UK comedy, it's an incredibly dense pool of talent. There's
yeah,
loads of really good comedians. There's the people you see on telly who are all brilliant.
yeah,
And below that, there's an incredibly large chunk of incredibly funny, really competent comedians who would do an incredible job on TV.
yeah,
But they don't get any of those spots because the thing is there's not that many TV opportunities for comedians.
yeah,
And every comedian who is already a TV comedian wants those opportunities, of course. So
yeah,
their agent is trying to get them on Live at the Apollo, QI, Would I Lie to You? And so any new person is not competing for just that spot generally. They're
mm,
competing for someone going, oh, we won't have Bob Mortimer on Would I Lie to You again. Even though he will be brilliant, we will
yeah,
get someone new on. So even though there's loads of people who will do an incredible job, what you're doing is you're trying to force your way up into a group of people that already exist that's
yeah,
quite big, who do a lot of telly. Like there's a big group of people who were quite young when Mock the Week first started
yeah,
and got on Mock the Week, and they're now still quite young. It hasn't been that long. They're like, early 40s, maybe late 30s. And they still have many, many years of being great on TV ahead of them. And that group, including the group above them, who are sort of comedians now in their 50s and 60s,
yeah,
they're all still very funny. So it's not like the opportunities kind of filter down.
yeah,
There's like a big block of people. And the only reason new opportunities become available is a new show gets commissioned, which is difficult because that's expensive and there's a lot of money for comedy, or they make an active effort to try and get new people in.
yeah,
And a lot of that's sort of, do you have the right agent? Are they very good at pushing you?
yeah,
And luck as well. Does whoever runs that show see you on a good day
yeah,
or not? Or are they busy? Do they get some phone call and that stops them coming to see you at all and stuff like that? So basically, there's lots more talented people than you would
yeah,
than you would assume from just watching TV comedies,
yeah,
which is why it's nice that there's opportunities for people to do their own things online and get seen there now.
yeah. And with Mock the Week returning to TLC on the 1st of February, and with the words "and more," as in there's more names to be announced than the ones they've already announced, and Darryl Breen made a statement earlier in the week, I think it must have been this week or last week, where he talked about the fact that he felt like different generations were coming up on the show. Do you think that Mock the Week will be that show that will help the next generation, or do you think that that type of thing won't happen? Or what do you think the process will be? Do you reckon new comedians will break into this new version of Mock the Week?
I hope so. That used to be the case. It used to be sort of the case that they did a fairly decent job. I mean, obviously, they had quite a lot of people who were there every episode or very frequently, but they also did a pretty decent job of trying to bring people in and giving them their first TV or their very early TV opportunities. I hope they carry on trying to do that. I hope they don't just go to the people who've all done it before and keep giving them the spots. It would be nice if they try and do that. I think they might end up doing that because probably I would imagine their budget's smaller on TLC. So probably they're going to be looking for people who are newer because that's what the budget allows. So fingers crossed that gets some new people to be able to demonstrate their ability to do topical stuff and just to be seen by an audience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think having an hour helps out. So if you've got a newer comedian, they've got that time to find where they are if the new to this, to get to relax into it and you get to see that journey through the episode. Do you think that will also help comedians to develop their persona on TV because they've got more longer to work it out in this format?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the other thing with most episodes of Mock the Week, obviously they record for longer, they edit it
Yeah.
down. So really, what makes the final edit is obviously the funniest stuff
Yeah.
that they can put out, but also they have to make a show that makes sense. So if someone does a callback, they
Yeah.
have to put the thing they're calling back into it. If there becomes, some other running joke, or if there's some weird, silly thing happens that's quite long, they have to put the whole thing in.
Yeah.
So really, that meant that if you were on an episode and you did a lot of good short jokes, but you weren't involved in any sort of big callbacks and stuff, you might vanish into the background a bit. But on an hour-long show, like you say, there's the hope that everyone gets a little bit more screen time in general. So you have a chance to not worry about that too much and not have to be quite as competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the other things you've worked on is, I think that in British comedy on YouTube, I think it's becoming a lot bigger, and you can sense that there's more British comedians leaning into that, not just your Americans that use the wrong term because it's an awful term, but the original term's far better. What was it like working on the sketch, which is the correct term, bag in?
Oh, that was fun. That's so my friend Jack directed that. Jack is also, I've known him for years. We worked together like over a decade ago when I was working on TV as a runner. So emptying bins and photocopying and stuff like that. So I've known him for ages. He directed my most recent Edinburgh show.
Yeah.
And we just filmed that. He's directed that as well. So obviously I've done a couple of short films of his. I was a dead body in one of his previous short films. In this one, I was alive, but I was a drug dealer, which I think is a step up from dead body. So yeah, it was fun. We just filmed it in his house. The nice thing is, it was kind of the same with filming my special that Jack did as well. We both have a history of working in TV on TV comedies as crew. So we know a lot of people are very good, very professional. So it's people who are really good at their jobs, proper professionals working with professional equipment, just doing something fun for a day. So it's really nice, and it always comes out looking really good. I mean, if you've watched it, it looks cool, doesn't it? It looks very professional and fun, but it's just, a fun thing to do and a fun way to highlight people in that thing. So yeah, it's very funny. Yeah. And we're thrilled that you asked that question.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're special, and when you're working on the idea that you want to film this, is the next process, because you know that the show's not the issue at this point in time. Is the next issue, is it harder to find the right people, or do you think that that's the easiest bit of the whole process because you know what your style is, you know how that show plays out? Do you think that trying to find the people that will do that justice, do you think that's the hardest thing to do?
Like in the audience, or like
well, in the crew wise, because you have to get the right people to make sure it turns out exactly how you envisioned it will look on screen.
Yeah, well, I think I was lucky in that I was working with Jack, who I've known for years and who I trust, and we both know people who we know will be brilliant professionals. So we were going to people who either we knew well or we had like solid recommendations on. So like Matt Wicks, who is the director of photography, we both have known for years. He's very, very good. So there's a degree of like, the nice thing on the night is I can go on stage, I can just perform the show, and I don't need to worry about like, are we going to have the right camera shots? Are we going to have the right this, that, the other? Like that is all done. I can trust people there. That's quite nice. We did it, well, what's it now? We filmed it like 10 days ago, 12th of January it was. And the reason we did it in January is that that's when the TV industry is quite dead. There's not a lot going on. So because we did it then, we were able to find people who were free. We were able to get a discount on renting camera equipment and stuff like that. And that was a conscious choice that we made because we thought, well, we want to do it well and we don't want to spend way more money than I can afford. So we looked at the right time to do it. We figured out it was January. We tried to find a good venue. We had to change that last minute, but we knew that the people who were going to film it were going to do a good job, and the sound people and stuff like that. So that's a nice level where then the only thing you have to worry about is performing it well on the night. And that's something that you should be able to do. I've done it hundreds of times already. So
And when you come to do editing, is the hardest bit, is it harder to edit the special in itself, or would you find it, or is it harder to find what will work well as separate clips when you go out promote the show and you try and promote yourself? And do you think that it's harder to find certain clips because it might not always make 100% sense?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I haven't looked at what I'm going to clip up as little clips yet from this show. I was watching it just earlier today. We did 2 records, so I was watching the second one. and trying to pick which one, like which jokes my favorite takes are of each of them. So I've only done that big level stuff at the moment, and that's kind of tricky because you yourself know all the jokes, so it's really sort of working out whether you think that you've performed them well in a way that comes across clearly. But if you've only got 2 options, that's fine. I'm not yet great at figuring out what makes for a great online clip. I don't put that many up. I will put a bunch up from this new show when it's done. Some bits won't make good clips because they won't make sense out of context. Like this show is quite heavily linked together. There's a lot, it's all on one theme. There's lots of callbacks. There's lots of bits that are like woven together. So there'll be some really great clips in there, but also there'll be some really funny sections where you'll be like, this 90-second bit theoretically should be a great clip. There's massive laughs. And then you'll watch it on its own. You'll go, oh no, this is all like callbacks and things that don't make sense without context. So I think it'll be fun to find those clips. And the edit will be fun. It depends how long you take over it. I like to be fairly pedantic about like, but I said that word a bit clearer in this take and I said this, but it's having watched both of the shows back and the quad splits. So we had 4 cameras, which means there's like 4, I'll try and show you. There's like 4 little options for each thing. Having watched them back, you get quite a good idea of like how nice it was in the room and how it will end up looking. There you go, that's me. For me.
Wow.
In front of my name, like I'm on Russell Howard's Good News.
And I do think that sort of enhances the experience because I've done that before where you've got 4 different and you feel like because you're probably not using as fancy of equipment as you would see in a TV show. You feel like you're producing a TV show because you can see the 4 different screens. You're like, I quite like the element of on Premiere you can press buttons, so you watch it through and you can just press which screen you want, and you get too carried away eventually because you're overexcited by pressing the buttons. But I think it sort of just gives you this better experience because then you're watching your work and you're really proud of it, but then you're also really excited to do the edit. Do you think that if the joy is throughout the process, does that make a better special at the end? Because you can sense that there's been joy not just from performing, but from where it left after that. Do you think that makes a better special for the viewers because they can sense there's joy throughout it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, if you have one camera, like your phone, and you stick it at the back of the screen and film yourself doing a 1-hour show, and it's a really great show, brilliant, you've got a nice clip, but that's not really a special, is it? Like, you can't really edit that. You can't really, like you say, you don't quite get the fun of cool different shots and stuff. You don't get, like, cool angles on specific jokes and things. Also, just, like, for an edit, having 4 shots means if I say a word stupidly and then said it again, you can just cut to a different camera and you don't have that word in there because you can, on the cut, you can just take out that bit, which means you can produce a show that is how you want it to look and you don't have to settle for anything weird that happened on the day. So there's a joy to that in the sense that you really get to look at it and go, this looks pretty, this is what I want, this is artistic, this is nice. And we were using proper fancy cameras and stuff like that, so it all looks very cool and every shot will look good. So it'll be fun to edit in that sense. It's a lot more fun than like when you do a gig somewhere like a very nice gig like Comedy Store. They have a camera in like above the stage, so when you do a gig there you can ask them for the footage and it's just one angle. So if you're going through that, watching that, trying to find social media clips, every time you say something stupid or like say you can't cut that out, so it's really just you like clipping out a bit of the middle, whereas doing a full edit with lots of cameras is much more fun.
And with the I don't know what the correct word is, but with the there's more of them. I don't know what the correct word is, but I'll work around. There's more specials now being put onto YouTube and than there is on Netflix and Amazon Prime and whatnot. And Next Up Comedies do an excellent thing to distribute their specials so that a wider audience can see these people that are talented. Why do you think that there's more specials going onto YouTube than any other platform?
Well, there's no barrier to entry really, apart from the talent to write the show and the money to film the show. So you can film very cheaply. You can film, a show you're doing anyway. You can just get a few people's phones in. If you get them, if the lighting's decent, the sound's okay, you can do that. you can spend more money on it, you can have better cameras, you can have, more people involved in the set and things. But the barrier to doing a show on Netflix is not that, like, it's not that everyone on YouTube wouldn't kill to have their show on
Yeah.
Netflix, but they've got the biggest comedians in the world on Netflix. They are not scouting for people who have really great 1 hour shows to put up there. They're scouting for already incredibly successful comedians putting up their new shows, really. So because YouTube doesn't have that barrier to entry, it's really just the barrier is, have you written a show that you think is good enough that you want to be out there? And are you willing to put in the time to edit it and put it up? So it's just, it's democratized it a bit. Because again, like, Next Up obviously have a lot of stuff on there, but there's still some barrier to entry there. They're not putting up everything and everyone, they obviously try and pick people who they think are good. And I think a lot of people now have realized they can put their show somewhere like Next Up maybe, and that might, they'll do a good job trying to promote it. But, Next Up shows are harder to find outside the UK, I think, and obviously harder to stumble on. Whereas if your show is on YouTube and you put a decent amount of effort into trying to get it out there, anyone could find it.
Yeah.
And that's all we want.
Yeah, and I do think that if you think about the amount of comedians that you want to see, I think having it on YouTube means that you can see them even if you're from a disadvantaged background where you won't be able to see them live. Do you think that's another positive? Because not everyone has access to the streaming services or even regular TV. So do you think having it on YouTube, which could be more easier to access, do you think that that sort of gives more people a chance to see the comedian that they might not have any access to otherwise?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about, like, if you want to watch stand-up comedy and that's the only thing you're interested in, okay, you can sign up for Next Up. If you don't know about Next Up, you're maybe getting Netflix. You're maybe some people put stuff on like Amazon Prime, not as many. There's a few things that end up on not on iPlayer. There's not a lot. So do you pay for all those separate subscriptions? It becomes very expensive. And also, like, you don't necessarily know how much stuff is on them. Whereas YouTube, you can just like look for a comedian and you'll probably find a clip. Or, if they're like me and don't have that much stuff up there, you'll probably at least be able to find something that tells you who they are. Eventually you'll find something of theirs. So it's much nicer for people who, also for capturing people who might not know how much they love stand-up comedy. If your thing gets recommended to someone who's watching something else, great, they might actually watch it. Whereas if they have to go and search for it and go onto a streaming platform and choose it, it's a bit different. Yeah,
and I think the issue with, say, for instance, you use Netflix, you get well, in my opinion, the American comedians aren't as good as everyone else, but you get too many American comedians, and it doesn't give you that variety that YouTube does. Because in YouTube, you can have anyone from around the world. If you really, really love a Australian comedian, they might have a special on YouTube or Tubi. There's someone there, but you sort of get that access to it a lot easier. Do you think that that's another aspect of it? Because then they can see people they wouldn't normally think about seeing. So if you watched a special by like Grace Jarvis, for example, you then get recommended other people's specials that are in the same sort of circles.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good way of people being discovered?
Definitely, yeah. And if the algorithm is working well, it should do what you say. It should try and recommend other good comedians, similar comedians, hopefully get you into that. And it's a good way to be discovered as well, because if you like, if me, someone who has not done much of any significant TV, I've never done anything where I've been doing big chunks of comedy on TV. I've done little bits and bobs of, like, here she is walking around the Edinburgh Fringe. It's not the same as, being on Mock the Week or something. So if someone like me is able to send, here's a YouTube link, you can watch it. Here is me doing my whole hour-long show. Do you like it? It's much easier than me trying to explain. Well, for an audience member, it's much easier than me trying to say, no, I promise I am funny. I mean, they might believe you, sure, and they might come. But if you send them a thing and they can watch it, great. And also for the industry, if you go, no, I'm really good, like, why would they believe that? Everyone says they're good.
Yeah.
If you can show them something, it's much better.
Yeah. And as we get to this point in the interview, and we've mentioned it quite a few times now, what is your upcoming special all about? Without spoiling it too much, what from what you can say, what is there to say about your brand new film special?
It's my show that I was doing at festivals in 2025. So I took it to Adelaide Fringe, Melbourne, and Edinburgh Fringe, and lots of Leicester Comedy Festival, lots of other UK festivals. And it's called Adele, Adele, Adele. Cliff, it isn't the consequences of my own actions. And it's about lying is the framework. So it's about whether you should lie to people, whether that's good or not. And also, I mean, it's spoilers a bit, but you know what, if they found this interview, they're already comedy nerds, so they can have a spoiler. It's also a dead parent show. It's about my mum dying. So it's sort of the framework of lying linked into like regrets about things you've said and not said, but it is fun. I should say, when you say it's a dead parent show, people are like, oh. There's lots of jokes in it. So yeah, it's a fun show. I've enjoyed writing it. I spent quite a while working on it. I think the first version of it I did was like, well, maybe 18 months ago, something like that, a while ago. And then I spent basically a whole year doing it in its full version and taking it to lots of places. And yeah, it's a good show. It's got some very silly stuff in. It's got some silly jokes about films I absolutely love. It's also because the way it is with all hour-long shows, you get to get further into things, so you can examine bigger topics and you can make them funny in a way that you can't in a 5, 10, 20-minute set. So yeah, it's about lying. It's about a dead mum. There's some stuff about jelly in there. There's, what else is there in there that I won't spoil it? Gillette Fusion razors, stuff like that.
And since you first performed the show to where it was when you filmed it, has the show developed significantly, or is it still the essence of what the original version was?
It's changed quite a lot. I mean, I tend to, with all my shows, in the early work in progresses, really what I'm bringing is just everything vaguely funny I think I have for the show. I'm not trying to structure it. I'm not trying to often with them. I'm not even trying to decide what the show's about at that stage. So obviously with this one, I knew I was going to have some bits about my mum, because that's the thing that had happened to me recently. That's the thing that was significant I was going to write about, but I didn't know how I was going to frame it. So the very earliest versions of it that I did at like Edinburgh Fringe in 2024 had some of the chunks that have ended up in the final show, but they've been refined a lot. They've got a lot more jokes in. There's some chunks that I just completely removed. There's some bits that have gone in entirely new and different from that. And a lot of it as well is moving things around. I think that's the nice thing. I've worked with directors on lots of my shows, and like nice thing with having, for example, Jack, who directed this show, someone who knows you, but also who's an outside eye, can just go, this will be a lot funnier if we put these completely in the opposite order. So it's changed a lot. And I think most people do that with their shows. I'm always suspicious of anyone whose first version of their show is basically the same as the last version, because I think, well, either you're a genius and you've written it perfectly immediately, or you're not putting enough effort into changing it. Like you should be, especially when you're previewing a show. Every single preview should be trying to find, am I moving this joke? Does it need a different punchline? Is there an extra joke here? Is there like, should I be taking this out? Is it not working? That's the whole point of the preview process. And I like doing lots and lots of previews because I'm not very good at remembering my show. So I need to do it lots of times to get the jokes all in my head. So I tend to always do minimum more previews than I do final performances in like Edinburgh. So for this one, obviously I took it to Melbourne and Adelaide as well. So that was a lot of extra ones, but still, aside from that, I think I'd already done about 60 performances of the show, different versions of it, maybe closer to 70 before I even took it to the Edinburgh Fringe, and then there's another 20 something of it. So it's pretty different now. You can see people who saw an early version would understand the connections and you know that it's still part of the same show, but you wouldn't, if you saw the first show, you wouldn't be able to recreate what the last show was.
And because you've mentioned how you took it to Australia, did you have to change much of the show for the Australian audience, or was there not many references that the Australians wouldn't understand?
Not as much as I thought. So I went over there, and I had some friends who are Aussie comics who are based in the UK and stuff, and some who were just friends who were going over. So I went over there and I wrote down before my first Adelaide Fringe show a list of everything I thought was a very British specific reference in the show. And I sat down with my friend Beck and I just gave her the list and I said, do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? And she said yes or no to different things. And most of it was stuff either really easy to swap in or out. I had trying to think, I had a reference to M&S ready meals, and I was like, well, M&S is a great UK reference, but if I want it to be more universal, I changed it to HelloFresh because that's a delivery service that everyone gets adverts for. And I had, what else? Oh, I had like a pets at home joke. They don't have pets at home, they have different pet shops. So I just changed it to a different pet shop branch. Like, really, very few things did I have to change. The show at least doesn't have that much really specific British stuff in it. And the few things that I did have to change, I only changed for clarity. And some things, of course, we have to remember, especially for like an audience, someone like Australia, like they have the internet. They know I'm from the UK. So I don't change everything to be a Aussie reference, because that would be weird if I imply that, like, you know, everything that happened in that happened in Australia. That's bizarre. It did happen in the UK. So I changed some bits, but not as much as you'd think. I changed things that I felt were unclear. I have a joke that I like. I think I'll leave it in for the final edit, but it's really very UK specific. It won't work outside the UK, which is about which magazine, the ones who recommend, you know, white goods and stuff. Which magazine isn't really a thing outside the UK, so that joke just doesn't work, and you can't change it because I'll spoil the joke for you, but it relies upon the word which. So the joke I'm making is that I think which magazine is written by and for witches. So you can't change that to a different industry magazine because that doesn't make any sense. So I took that joke out entirely because it's just a topper for the Aussie bit, but it's in the final version. I'll probably leave it there because, you know, a confused comment going, what does she mean, is still engagement. And for the people who get it, it works. But yeah, I didn't change as much as I thought I'd have to. And also I was still at that stage changing the show and making the show better anyway. So
and what's interesting, and I don't know anyone that still did, but if anyone had a joke about Woolworths and they were making a reference to old Woolworths, that's the only joke you can take to Australia and it'd be really relevant because it's still a Woolworths. I think that's the only time when you might change the description because a British Woolworth might be slightly different to what a Australian Woolworths is, but that's the only time you can keep the joke because it was a reference in the UK, but older people recognise it, and in Australia everyone will know it because it still exists. And
I think I'm trying to remember if I changed it. I had a joke about Boots the pharmacy. I think I just left it as Boots. I think enough Australian people know that it's Boots, and also I make it clear in the joke that I'm talking about a pharmacy. There's some bits you change. There's some bits I think it's like I say, like comedy for children. You've got to respect people's intelligence. Like audiences outside the UK understand that the UK is different. So years ago, I went over to the States to visit my sister when she was at uni there, and I did a second city course and like some random gigs as part of that. I didn't change everything. People there knew I wasn't from the States, so I did British jokes, but ones where I felt they would understand what I was on about. And I didn't do references to Boots the chemist because again, they won't get that. It's not assuming everyone needs to be babied into a joke. It's just going, how much of the punch of this joke relies upon people immediately getting it? Do I need to tweak it for that reason?
So I think it's like if you were making a joke about the fact that the co-op is a supermarket and a funeral home, people elsewhere would understand that as they'll understand that if you explain the co-op is a supermarket, they'll understand that joke still because there will be some small town in America where they've got a shop that's also a funeral home. There's also a restaurant. There'll be areas in that. Do you think that that's what makes comedy sometimes easier in those places because you can roughly just if you explain the bit of the joke, it'll make sense to that audience because you only need to know it's that certain place, and then they'll get where you're getting at.
Sometimes that's the funniest bit, the explaining. Like sometimes if you go, like I did try that Which magazine joke a few times in Australia, and quite often it got a good laugh because I fully explained what Which magazine was and why the joke works. Now, obviously, for the show, you can't write that into your show as an explanation because that's too silly, and then you'll bring it back internationally. But like for a live gig, and I think I always focus on being as funny as I can live in the room that I'm currently in. I'm not thinking about, am I filming this for somewhere else? Unless it's like filming it like I was the other day. So I always think, do whatever's funniest in the room. So sometimes in the room, what's really funny is you do a joke, some people get it, some people don't. explain the joke. Sometimes that is funny. Sometimes you get some really good, funny responses out of breaking things down.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you don't have to explain things, but sometimes you can really find extra bits to the comedy by making yourself explain stuff. And sometimes then those jokes are great back when you bring them back to the UK. If you write a really funny joke about why it's weird that the co-op has a funeral home and like lots of shops, that could be a perfectly funny joke here. People here still understand. Just because they know that doesn't mean they can't appreciate a good observation about that.
Yeah. And so, as we come towards the end of this glorious, excellent, wonderful dictionary defining interview, without giving away your home address, where can people track you down online?
They can find me on Instagram. It's Adele Cliff Comedy, and that's about the only place I put anything. I'm on Blue Sky. I don't really use it. I'm not on X because it's full of bots and awful people. So yeah, Instagram probably. I will be probably putting my special somewhere on YouTube, but I will post about that on Instagram.
And so there we have it. The very first episode of Joking Apart for 2026, the podcast that has its competition but chooses to be respectful and not say any more about it, because it'd be funny if we try and get that host, as I mentioned previously, onto the podcast, because then it'll be even funnier, because then I'm playing him at his own game. So thank you for watching. There'll be more from me, and there'll be more on Tom's Comedy Club if you're watching this over on YouTube, because, well, why not? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.